Hi, good afternoon, viewers. My name is Bernard Mwangi, and welcome to We Do Recover. Welcome this afternoon. Welcome to part two of a great uh, thing that we're going to talk about today, which is the history of addictions treatment in Kenya. And to my left, we have Seth Oketch, also known as Professor of Addictions Therapy in Kenya. And we are going to look at his role in addictions therapy in Kenya, and he's part of what we call the second generation. Oh, he called it the second generation. But again, it's so intertwined with your story, and uh, it would be really, I was going to use the word remiss, but the viewer would be bereft of the experience of how you came into this industry in the first place. So, I don't know, maybe introduce yourself again for those who missed last week's episode, and we can go from there. We can pick it up from there.
Yeah, thank you, Benji. My name is Seth Oketch. I'm in recovery from addictions, but I'm also an addiction professional. I was born in the 70s, and I think that in the 70s, really, when I was born, my parents were teachers then, so I would say I was brought up in a good home, like many people. Apart from my dad being very strict, and my mother was the opposite. And what happened was, I'm just going to go through this real quickly. As soon as I was born a couple of years after that, I had a hunchback. Yeah, I
Okay.
had a hunchback. It wasn't easy to treat it then, and so my parents really took me to my grandparents in Rusinga Island. In Rusinga, there was a lady that treated that using, again, plant-based medicine. And so I got better a couple of years later. This was intense therapy too, just like one for methadone. It's just that, it took a different format, okay?
Uh-huh.
And then, yeah.
Just a question before you go on.
Yeah.
So, you interacted with plant medicine way in your youth.
Yes,
and
yes.
that's a part where you began to not only respect it, but you could see its benefits in your life throughout your life.
Absolutely. I was a kid, and I think in the 70s there weren't many hospitals, and so traditional healers were the primary mode of treatment for a lot of people, so they used herbs for the most part. So in my own personal experience, the herbs really helped me overcome hunchback. I still got friends of mine, some of them my age, some of them slightly younger than me, but never had the opportunity that I had, and so they continued to have their condition. So my interaction with plant-based medicine was when I was really a kid. I think
Okay.
barely 5 years old when I started the therapy. And then soon after that, my mother developed a mental health problem, and that really broke my heart. And so then when that happened, we really didn't have a stable place to stay. Sometimes we'd stay with stepmothers, sometimes we'd stay with my grandparents, but my grandparents really took the back of the job of raising me. And so then when I got to high school, I started smoking weed, I started using alcohol, and really mainly to be able to take care of the feelings that I had. I felt lost for the most part. I felt life was so unfair. I felt really lacked love in my life. So continued using, and then at some point it became a problem when I got to high school.
Yeah.
So I was suspended and expelled from a number of schools. There would be 5 by count now. So it got to a point where there was just some relationship issues with my dad, who really was a strict disciplinarian. He had never used alcohol or drugs in his life, and so he couldn't understand what was going on. And at some point, I was a high school dropout for a year. I just took care of his cows and goats and sheep.
Basically, had given up on you.
Yeah. So what happened was I got expelled from school because of smoking weed, and this was like the 4th time this was happening, and he said, well, since you don't want school, I got some work for you. So just take care of my cows, and it looks like that's the kind of life you want to live. So for a whole year, I just did that. Yeah, and then I went back to school and continued for the final year that I went back to school. I never used for a whole year. I just focused on studies, and by God's grace, I got some grade that took me to uni. And then when I went to uni again, I started using, and so it became a real challenge. My folks tried everything, like prayers, tried prayers, tried the traditional medicine as we knew it, but none of those really worked for me. And as soon as these ones were done, I went back to using. So this really continued, virtually lost everything.
Okay.
People regarded me as the alcoholic of the village. They don't really use the word alcoholic.
Everybody in your neighborhood knew.
Yeah, I'm the drunk. I am the drunk.
Undolem Levi.
Yeah, William Levy. But they really sympathized with me. Okay.
Okay.
I think in my culture, and it's a culture across the country, when you have mental health or when you have addictions, people think these are not normal things. They think that somebody else's hand is involved. Umerogwa.
Chira has been involved.
So there was always someone to be blamed for my drinking.
Another question in there. When you're talking about traditional healing, you're not talking about witchcraft or anything. You're just talking about herbal medicine and massage and things like that.
That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like plant-based medicine. I'm not talking about what they call witchcraft these days. Yeah, it's as old as us. You know, sometimes when you look at the word treatment, sometimes I kind of get a little funny with the wordings. See, the word treatment really, the word treat comes from two words. Tree, eat, like eating a tree. This is really how the whole spectrum of treatment started, by people using plants as a way to heal themselves. Okay? So when I talk about plant medicine, I'm not talking about no witchcraft. Yeah.
So that was just a disclaimer. I have to be very, very sure. That is what you meant.
Yes. I'm no witch doctor or nothing like that.
So you're the neighborhood drunk.
Yes.
People are thinking there's chira, there's some witchcraft has been involved in your family line. There was your mom, now there is you. What is happening?
Yeah. I think this is the one thing I have to stress, okay? People don't realize how powerful beliefs are. You know, beliefs are like eyes. You see life through your beliefs. Okay? So when you do believe that somebody has bewitched you, or that your drinking is not normal because of someone else, really, that's going to be your experience of it. And you're going to find plenty of evidence to be able to support that, even though it might not be factual. You see, sometimes we create our own reality by the way that we think, by the thoughts that we hold.
And the things that we say.
Yeah, and the beliefs that we hold. And every thought that you trust becomes your truth. It doesn't matter whether it's factual, that really becomes your truth. The word truth comes from two words, trusted thoughts. So any thought that you trust really becomes your reality. So that really was my, at some point I believed, hey, this is, they bewitched me to do this. And so I resigned myself to drinking because I knew, well, I have no control over this. When they decide to set me free, maybe my life will get better.
When that person decides.
Yes, when they decide, because now it's up to them.
When mfungwa.
Yeah,
they are prisoner.
Yeah. So then, tried many things that didn't work until I got to rehab. And when I got to rehab, one of the things that rehab helped me understand that really this was a disease. And even if somebody bewitched me, at least I had an opportunity to take responsibility for my process.
Okay.
And
Okay.
that I was not a victim,
Mhm.
and that I needed to take responsibility for that.
Yes.
So yeah, so got to rehab like I was saying last week.
Mhm.
Spent 3 months there as a client.
Mhm.
But like I said last week, on day one, I knew that somehow I was gonna get back and help people struggling with addiction. I had gone to school to do agriculture engineering, which I did and graduated. But the day that I got to the rehab, my brother did mention to me, like I said last week,
Mhm.
and that really stuck to me. And I told myself, well, one day I'll be able to help people struggling with addictions.
Wow. Wow. So I'm just going to mention a name.
Yeah.
Mr. Caleb Agira.
Yeah.
So what was his story? Because I believe he's the first generation of treatment.
Yeah. You know, Caleb.
Providers in Kenya.
Yeah, Caleb is. Caleb taught me everything I know. He was like a father to me. He saw a potential in me that not many people had seen before.
Okay.
So Caleb, interestingly, let me just go back a little bit. If you look at the history of addiction treatment in this country,
Yes.
it actually started with the recovery movement. You know, the AAs in the 70s, and you'd be surprised that Charles Jr. was one of the people that brought Alcoholics Anonymous for the first time to this country. History that's not known to many people.
Was that in the 60s or the 70s?
Early 70s, really.
Uh-huh.
And then in 1977 and 78, there was a Catholic priest by the name Father Peter Thiambo.
Uh-huh.
So Father Peter Thiambo was a Catholic priest in the then Catholic Diocese of Kisii. So Catholic Diocese of Kisii, really was a huge one, encompassing Homa Bay and I think part of Kisumu. So Thiambo is the first person that we know from our history that had addiction and went to treatment in the U.S. Okay, and again, you can see the role that the Catholic Church has played in promoting addiction recovery in this country. So he went to treatment and then he came back. So when he came back, he was posted at Asumbi. Okay.
Okay.
So while at Asumbi, he started forming AA groups within the community. Okay. And then at some point, he decided that they would establish more or less like a halfway house, okay, for people who couldn't be able to sober up through the AA groups that they had set up in the community.
Okay.
So Caleb happened to be one of the beneficiaries of this initiative, okay. So with the help of Father Thiambo, he sobered up, and in 1978, really, like I mentioned, Father Thiambo started a halfway house in Asumbi. It used to be called Carl Wantila House, after Pope John II, right? I'm told that was the original name. So he did this for a couple of years, and then he died. So when he died, that whole thing didn't continue until 1988, when Caleb, and I said Caleb was one of the earlier students, for lack of a better word, of Father Thiambo.
Yes.
So Caleb came up and took over, that halfway house. Okay. Then he, over time, transformed it into a rehab. By the time that it got to 1999 and 2000, it was already fully established house.
So it is now what is known as Asumbi Treatment Center.
Asumbi Treatment Centers. Now they have a couple of branches across the country, both in Homa Bay and in Nairobi. So Caleb really would be regarded as the father, of addiction treatment in this country. If you look at, of course, treatment programs have grown exponentially.
Yes.
But when you look at them very closely, especially the early ones, they probably took everything from Asumbi, word to word. I don't want to say they photocopied, but they took mostly the Asumbi model and replicated it elsewhere. So Caleb really was the father of addiction treatment, not just in terms of rehab work, but also in terms of outreach. If you look at some of the work that he did in Nairobi with Maisha House and
Yes,
the whole
Nairobi
thing.
Outreach Services Trust.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you know how he combined outreach with the methadone treatment.
Yes.
I think he is a pioneer in that area. Yeah.
Wow. So when you're looking at his impact, you're not looking only at in Kenya. You're also looking across the board, East and Central Africa.
Absolutely.
Just thinking, at around that time, the only treatment facilities that were found was maybe South Africa. So why was it so revolutionary that Caleb ran a Sumbi Treatment Center? Was it not only the issues of cost, but what else?
No, so I think the thing with Caleb is that he had some exposure in the West, both in the U.S. and Europe. Okay.
Okay.
From what he says, he had spent 3 months in the U.S. and another 3 months in the U.K. He explains that the way that he was taught is that when he went to these places, he was asked to be a client. Okay. So then he would process the client experience with the people that were training him. So he deeply understood how those programs work. So when he came back, I think he got some support from the Wilson Foundation, run by Father Steve Newton. He's still there in Chicago today. His organization didn't just give funding to Asumbi, but also gave funding to Radial. It's the one that helped Radial start for the first time. So the reason why it was really revolutionary is that, one, he was able to run them very sustainably. And he relied on people's motivation. He relied on peers supporting each other, okay? And then over time, he kind of gradually trained his own people to work with him, okay? Those ones were the days that we didn't have many trained psychologists or counselors, you know, in these programs. It was people in recovery being mentored to support other people. You know? So that was revolutionary, and because he was, you know, because that was the only program, people got to know about it after a while. It took a little while for it to pick up. It took years for it to pick up.
Yes, it did.
But once it picked up, people got better. I think the success rates those days speaks for itself. If you knew people went to treatment those days, you can count people who went back to using by one finger. Most people stayed sober. So it was revolutionary because it was a new idea. The 12 steps was a new concept. The peer-to-peer support was a new concept. The idea that you could put alcoholics in one place and empower them to be able to support each other was a completely new idea.
Wow. Wow. We'll go on a short break, and when we come back, we shall go on as to how you got trained and how you moved on forward.
Thank you.
From that part.
Thank you.
And that has been We Do Recover. We shall continue after the break. Stay tuned.
watching JTV, your number one Christian channel.
Welcome back, viewers. This is We Do Recover, and today we are talking about the history of addictions treatment in Kenya. And our esteemed guest is Professor Seth Oketch, and he was talking about his involvement in the whole period and how you became the second generation treatment provider in Kenya. And we got to the point whereby Caleb had now decided this is a guy I want to train.
Yeah.
Or it is you who decided you wanted to be trained?
He actually decided. When I got out of rehab, I didn't have anything. So
Yes.
the only thing that I had left was a pool table. And I was staying with my brother when I left rehab. So I took the pool table, knowing very well that in rehab we had been told that you keep away from slippery people, places, and things. So I, with the consent of my brother, I think they had told my brother not to tell me anything, just to observe. So when I went and suggested to him that I wanted to take the pool table to the next bar, when you go to Asumbi, there's a place called Cinema. So there was one bar there. So when I asked my brother whether I could take the pool table there, he didn't seem to object, which was very strange. He actually gave me the money for the pickup. So I took the pool table there, and when I say that I had nothing left, I mean I had nothing left. Even my ID and my certificates, you know, the way that you get to a place to drink and you order beer and then you say, okay,
Hold on to these so that I
I don't have, you know, you order so you have the money, and then you have to leave your certificates and your ID there. That's what I did. So I didn't have anything. So I took the pool table there, and so people started playing. For some reason, I had the strength to say no to drinking. This went on for 3 months, actually 4 months, I think. Every single day I would wake up, and this was my job. And my counselor at the rehab, Mr. Nyolo, every time he went to the shopping center, he would always see me there. And sometimes he would come, but I could see that he wanted to say something. And I suspect what he wanted to say was that, hey, this is really a slippery place for you. You shouldn't be here. But you know, I had made a commitment within myself that I wasn't going back to drinking. I think what I told myself was, it doesn't matter. The decision to go back to drinking will be my decision.
But it's not something you'd recommend to anybody.
Yeah. I don't recommend it, but I also think that people are different, right? So one day the counselor comes and says, hey, the director would like to see you. And on the top of my head, I'm just telling myself, well, because Caleb was a tough guy, so...
For those who do not know about Bwana Caleb, when he says he wants to see you,
Yeah.
even if you're a director of another facility somewhere, you will go and see him.
Yes. So you knew that there would be something, you know, he wouldn't call you to say hi to you often, okay? So I went to see him. To my surprise, he didn't even talk about the danger of what I was doing. He said, well, when you're here, the people who have been in rehab, I was chairman at some point of the clients. I remember Boniface is the one who campaigned for me to be the chair.
He's still a politician too.
So I was a chair, and so I think he felt that I handled my tenure very well and that I had some influence. So he said, well, by the way, that time, I was one of the youngest people in rehab. You know, most people in rehab were in their 40s, late 30s. I was 25 going to 26. So I said, well, maybe it's something to think about, that there are more and more young people like you that are coming into treatment. And he asked me whether I was willing to be trained so that I could probably work with those young people. But then that really resonated with me, because you remember the first day, something had told me that one day I'll do this job, and it almost looks like, well, this was happening now out of nowhere. It's not like I went asking for a job or anything like that. So that's how I got integrated and started, being trained. And they call it on-job training, right?
Yes.
I spent 1 year doing that, and then worked there again for 2 other years as a counselor. So at that time again, there was only a Sumbi, and Red Hill had started in 2001.
Yes.
I think Dr. Njagi also, Brightside was also
You had
was also
started at
there.
that particular time.
Yeah, so Caleb and Mrs. Sakoli, Teresa, the one that started Radio Place, were really, if you look at history, were the first generation of addiction providers or professionals in this country. Of course, there was other counselors that worked with them, people like Joseph Nyola. So I would consider those as a first generation of professionals. And so then the next lot is really our lot. And, our lot, we got so many people in that category.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So how did the field evolve from that particular time?
Now, so, what is interesting is after 2001, after radio, then more and more rehabs started coming up. And most of these rehabs were by people in recovery who felt that there was need to be able to create more rehabs to support their colleagues who were
Yes.
struggling from addiction.
Yes, yes.
So many of them really didn't have the trainings, not just the training to be able to do the actual job, but also trainings to manage rehabs. So we didn't have any standards then, and so many times people started to refer to us as quirks. So our colleagues on the medical side of it were very fond of that. I remember this cool word, Q-do-do-do-do, okay?
Kyundudo.
Q-do-do-do-do. It was a very common...
To make it worse, Kyundudo.
Yes.
Says it twice.
Yes. So it was a way to describe rehab providers and owners as quirks. And I think what is missed in this discussion is that when you look at the history of addiction in other countries,
Yes.
it always started by people who had a problem, who had gotten some help, and they thought maybe we could share this with other people. So they didn't really have to be exposed at that point in time.
Yes.
I think that when people have the right intention, sometimes they shouldn't really be punished for that. So then later on in 2005, SAPTA started the training providers, and many
Yes.
people in recovery and others, started going to school to train as addiction counselors.
Yes.
And this was really, really helpful in many ways. I think one of the things that happened is the people who were training at SAPTA then were really, really good people in terms of understanding addiction. So they didn't just do trainings, but they started providing supervision to other rehabs, okay? So you got people like Catherine Garaju, you got Tombo Bulutsa then, really, really smart people who understood addiction. So that was very, very helpful.
Yes.
And I think the role that SAPTA has played in terms of professionalizing the addiction in this country cannot be underestimated. They've done an excellent job in terms of creating a movement of people that have been trained in addiction counseling.
Yes.
Almost at the same time, let me get back again, NACADA started in 2001. And so NACADA was there, they had this huge mandate about prevention and rehab side of it. And so for the first time we had a watchdog. So this continued. But it is not until 2009 that with the help of NACADA and U.S. State Department, that we actually developed standards for ourselves for the first time. So NACADA really spearheaded this process. They had a team of consultants
Yes.
that I was lucky to be part of that worked with the rehabs that were there then. I remember an invitation to 17 rehabs, okay?
Yes.
Coming together, I think it was Kenya Institute of Administration, and having 3 days to just look at the draft document and giving recommendations,
Yes.
coming up with standards. So those standards, I think they have been reviewed, I think 2 more times since
Yes.
then. But that was really the first attempt at profession, other than the work that SAPTA was doing. The coming of standards, in my opinion, was the second best thing that happened in terms of professionalizing.
So the first side was the staffing, and this other side now was the running of rehabs.
Yeah, the standards.
Yeah.
Now the third thing which happened, which I think was very important. Now, NACADA also spearheaded the development of Code of Ethics for addiction professionals in 2011. Okay. Now, between 2009 and 2011, I think it's continued after that, that we said, okay, people can go to school and get certificates, get diploma, get
their
degrees,
get their masters.
but they have to have certification to be able to work in our rehabs as addiction professionals, okay? So we started, again, with the help of NACADA to develop what we call the Kenya Education and Certification Program for addiction professionals. So developed an entire curriculum that our professionals would go through.
Okay.
And once they completed that, and then they completed a number of hours of practice, then they will be eligible to sit for certification exams, okay?
Okay.
And then they will be certified at different levels based on the education and the number of hours of supervised practice. So that was, again, a big milestone in terms of professionalizing our field. So now we got what we call ICAP, right? Which is, well, an international certification. The last time I checked, if you have that certification, then you have an opportunity to work in 76 different countries, okay?
So the ICAP, it came off from the Colombo Plan.
Yeah, it came off from the Colombo Plan.
So what's the Colombo Plan, if you can share?
Let me just add something which I think will be very controversial.
Okay.
It was not supposed to be the Colombo Plan. So the Kenyan system ran together with the Colombo system. There was funding for the Kenyan program, and then there was funding for the Colombo program. Okay?
Yes.
All the systems that we developed were for Kenya. And I think the difference is you needed to have a certification board here. Okay?
Okay.
The certification board would be the board in charge of the exams and the actual certification. Okay?
Yes.
Now, something happened somewhere. Okay?
Yes.
That whole thing was never completed.
On the Kenyan side?
On the Kenyan side.
Okay.
Okay? So when it was never completed, I think that some people made the decision that we could use the Colombo Plan in the interim, and that's where we find ourselves in. I mean, the arguments for both, that maybe a Kenyan would be better, but maybe the Colombo one would be better. But I think that we are where we are right now, and I think that what matters is that people who work in the field at least meet some minimum requirements.
Which are internationally based.
Absolutely.
We also knowing that what has happened in Kenya has opened treatment facilities as far as Zambia, Tanzania, Uganda, and many of the neighboring countries. So when they get certification from the Colombo Plan, it is actually advantageous for them.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that this cannot be overemphasized, that Kenya has always been a leader in Africa, really, as far as addiction treatment is concerned. We are way ahead of our peers in Africa, perhaps coming close to South Africa and Egypt for the most part. Okay. And so what we've been able to do in our country, right from developing standards, helping people set structures for rehabs, forming the Rehab Association, many other African countries follow up after that. I think that our master trainers that they were trained through the Colombo Plan have been training people all over Africa, and I think it's a commendable thing to say.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So what happened after that? After the Colombo plan?
So after the Colombo plan, now we are continuing with that process every time and again. Now we have many education providers
Yes.
that prepare people for that certification.
Of which you are also one of them.
Absolutely, I'm one of them, together with a wonderful Addiction Leadership Academy. Now, I think where we are right now, we are having another debate, which I think is a healthy debate. So we are having, again, we are having debates on, one more time, we have had this debate before.
Yes.
In terms of who should regulate rehabs, okay? So we still have Nakeda that has a legal mandate to do that. You got the KPMD what?
KMPDU.
Yes, that other one also.
The doctors, basically.
Yes, yeah. So that's another piece. And so the debate that we're having is which way for us, okay? As an industry, we have an association that's really spearheading that debate. But I think the biggest question that I want to say is this. In 2007, when I was the director at Radio, we got NHI for the first time, okay?
Yes.
Well, there are standards that existed then, that were used, okay?
Yes.
By NHIF, without the involvement of anyone else. It was the NHIF and the rehab. And I can tell you today, when you see, NHIF have been having a reimbursement of 60,000 per month.
Yes.
Well, you know where that came from? It came from the fact that at Red Hill then, the fee per month was 60,000.
So they could only pay for you 1 month?
No, they paid for 3 months then.
They paid for 3 months?
Yeah, they paid for 3 months, okay. So since then, when I moved to the retreat again, then we got an HI for the second time. Then what happened again? It became 60,000. Now it was just a lump sum fee that we were charging at Red Hill. That's what brought that up. So I think more rehabs have been accredited now.
Yes.
Many more rehabs are having challenges being accredited. They do believe that the standards that they are being subjected to really are not real rehab standards. So we're having this debate again now.
So what you're talking about rehab standards, you're talking about, is the NHIF or KMPDU, what are they bringing standards which are more related to hospitals and not to rehab care, or?
I think I don't want to really get in the middle of that debate because the association is doing it on our behalf. But there are people who believe that, well, rehab shouldn't really be treated as a medical facility other than the detox part of it, okay? It's much more of a psychosocial intervention with a medical component to it. It is not a medical facility with a psychosocial component to it. I think that's the debate that people are having. So a lot of us feel that if you, again, this is a feeling, that if you go with the idea that rehab is a medical facility that has a psychosocial component, then you're going to lock so many rehabs out. And I want to emphasize that to date that the rehab industry is more of a private sector affair.
Yes.
You got, people like me and you setting up facilities with the idea of wanting to help. Many of them do not have the resources to run like a quasi or a hospital kind of a thing. And we feel that it's a healthy debate,
Yes.
Maybe we'll get a middle ground, but again, a lot of people...
Because both sides have valid arguments.
Yeah, so the association is spearheading that, and I don't want to insert myself in that debate. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you've talked about the association. What is this association?
So for the first time, I don't know, 2-3 years ago, 2019, right? So the rehab owners came together and formed an association that would not only ensure quality service delivery, but also protect their interests as an industry. So it's called APRA, the Addiction Prevention and Rehabilitation Association, but this is really for the rehab owners. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So it's been in existence for the last 3 years.
Yes, sir.
So, what? Because you've worked also in the United States,
Yeah.
also in Kenya, and we know that this association is the first of its kind in Africa.
Yes.
South Africa has, I think, 3 or 4 different associations doing
Mhm.
3 different things.
Mhm.
When we look at the industry in Kenya vis-a-vis the industry in the United States, what are the differences and how much growth do we need to do to get to that?
Yeah, it's a good question. You know, Kenyans are always ambitious. You know, they want to get to where the U.S. is pretty quickly. Okay.
Or pass it?
I'll go past them. I love Kenyans for that. If you ask me, our industry is still a very young industry. It's still a very young industry. If you look at the fast rehab, probably we're getting to the 30-year mark, slightly over 30 years, right? And anybody that's 30 years old is a young adult. If you get back to the majority of rehabs, really less than 10 years, okay?
Yes.
So I think we still have a way to go. If you ask me, and this is really not to minimize the good work that, you know, my colleagues are doing, we're probably close to 30 years behind what they're doing in the U.S., even though we are scaling up pretty quickly.
Yes.
And I'm talking generally as an industry. You know, individual rehabs could be doing way better than most rehabs overseas. So what I think is, I think we are going at the right pace. Even though people would like us to move much faster and be like the U.S. pretty quickly. So I think that, you know, in the U.S., again, you got many associations, but there's one national association that most rehabs belong to. And I think what it has done is to be able to bring the industry together, being able to lobby, being able to advocate. And I think our association also hopefully can get to that point where we lobby for enabling legislation, we lobby for coverage, including NHIF coverage for rehabs.
And other private entities.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I'm very a strong advocate for, part of the reason why everybody wants to regulate us is because we don't have a Rehabilitation Act. And I'm very particular that until we have one law that consolidates all these different pieces, we will always have that push and pull. I think also people have to continue to pay for their pocket, from their pocket for rehab services when we have the rehabilitation fund that hasn't really been operationalized, okay? When we have NHIF that could still be able to help many more people, when we have insurance that could still be used in coverage for addiction, because addiction is a disease like any other disease. So I feel like the association is just starting. I think that they got their eyes in the right places. Hopefully, we can advocate and get to a point where we are able to influence, policy in many ways. I think when you look at the industry over the years, by my own estimation, we are getting to a bill, or maybe we have crossed it already, 1 billion shilling industry. And that's not a small industry, okay? We need proper regulation, but we also need resources.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so any parting shots to not only a rehab owner, but also to parents, to the whole community in general, that you may have?
I think I'll say this, and I know this may not be the experience of many people, but I say this with all humility, that I've seen treatment work for people. And that when someone is addicted, it is not their choice to be addicted. It's a disease like any other disease. And once addiction sets in, it takes over the mind and the body of the individual. And when it does that, these individuals need help. And so I'll just say that if you got a family member, or a friend or someone that you know that's struggling with addiction, please, make sure that at least they get some help. Rehab is not the only option. I mean, residential rehab. We've got outpatient programs in this country that you can reach out to and get some help. So, again, there's a lot of stigma, not just on addiction side, but also mental health. These are not things that people want to associate with, but if you don't do something to help someone that's struggling with addiction, sooner or later, addiction will have to impact on you. Many people say that addiction affects family members more than the individual, and that really may be true to some extent. So, if you have a loved one or a friend who is suffering from addiction, it would be really a good idea to make sure that they get the help that they deserve.
Awesome, awesome. So, dear viewer, how can they get to reach you if they have any queries, questions?
Absolutely. I appreciate the question. Yeah, so the easiest way to reach me is through text or through phone call. You can call me on 0742756933. I'll repeat again, 0742756933.
Wow, awesome. We thank God for you coming in today. This has been Seth Oketch. He's the founder of Addiction Leadership Academy. And we have not even talked about the academy in this episode. What does the academy do?
Absolutely. The academy is, I call it a training and rehab management consulting firm. What we do is that we train and mentor upcoming addiction professionals and help them get accreditation to practice as addiction professionals, right from recovery coaching to international certified addiction professionals, level 1, 2, and 3. And also we work with rehabs to just make sure that we build their capacity and they become the most outstanding rehabs in the world. So that's what we're trying to do.
So we thank God, and he has a revolutionary new product. If you missed out on last week's episode, please go and watch it. This has been We Do Recover. My name is Bernard Mwangi. Stay tuned for next programming. Shalom.